Everyone knows motorsport is expensive, but today I'm going to talk to you about a car that you can buy for less than £10,000 that runs on slicks, has wings, weighs around about 300 kilos and has about 200 brake horsepower. I'm Trevor and welcome to a brand new video on the 7 Spot channel. Hi and welcome again to the YouTube 7 Spot channel. Today we've got something a little bit different for you. We always do kit cars, as you know, and today we've got something that's got a space frame chassis, it's got an engine, but it's a race car. And Ben Bonfield here has very kindly agreed to show us around his Jedi Mark IV hill climb car. And we've got something else to show you in a minute as well, which is even more exciting. So thank you, Ben, for taking the time out for us for this.
I'm more than happy to show you around the car.
That's brilliant. I've done some research, but just give me a little bit of an oversight of, I know this is a Jedi Mark IV hill climb car, but for the uninitiated, just give a quick overview of engine, chassis and so on, and then we'll do a quick front to back and go through the whole car.
Yeah, so this is a Mark IV Jedi. It's probably one of the most cost-effective ways into lightweight single-seater racing. Great bits of kit. This one's got a 1000cc engine fitted in the back, Suzuki based. We run slicks wings, which is fantastic for the downforce. This has huge amounts of grip. It is actually really user-friendly to drive.
Yeah.
And everything on this car is quite cost effective. As they run a race series, parts are readily available. So yeah, as a project and a vehicle, it is a great thing to own and work on. Everything is accessible. It's a fantastic machine.
And Jedi themselves, they've been going since 1984, and they actually do not just hill climb cars like this one, but they've come up with their own circuit championship, haven't they? Formula 1000, and Jedi themselves are still going, which is why it makes one of these such a good investment, because you can still get all the bits.
Yes, that is the great thing. So even if you buy a hill climb car, it can be sold to the circuit market. John and Fraser, funny enough, we've had some bits off them recently, so they are definitely still in business and they are still making new cars. Last time I spoke to them, I think there was 2 new chassis being produced. I think they're over 200 chassis now. So the cars are out there, and the design hasn't really changed massively since 1984, which is great for anyone who's had an early one. A late one is just as easy to pick up.
Well, it shows a great design. If it was good to start with, it still is, which is brilliant. So why don't we start down the front and do a walk through the car and have a look at some of the components, and you can talk through as we go front to back.
Yes, yeah, that's not a problem.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ben. Okay, Ben. So we're already established this is a Jedi. You said this is a Mark IV. What year is that from?
This one is from 1994 it is, and yeah, it's the Mark IV. I think was first introduced around 94.
Okay.
So
it's good, nearly 30 years old, but it still looks absolutely stunning. So let's just have a go through the car from the front to the back. I'm looking at this front wing. It looks very nice. It looks like carbon fibre,
It is. The front wing on this one is carbon fibre, built by actually a friend of ours who is a hill climber and motorsport enthusiast. We gave him an original Jedi high downforce hill climb wing, and he thankfully recreated it in carbon fibre.
Oh, and what sort of weight saving has that given you?
It was about 5 kilos.
Oh wow, that's quite a lot for a small item.
Yeah.
So as we move back, suspension, I can see we've got double wishbone with coilovers, fairly common to the kit car fraternity. They would recognise that, but I notice it's mounted on rose joints rather than straight sort of hard into the chassis. Is that to protect it when it has an incident?
Yeah, it's easier to deal with a broken rose joint than it is to try and repair a bent chassis. So I think the design was around for ease of replacement.
That sounds very reasonable. Can we just lift the nose cone off the front and have a look under there?
That's not a problem. Right. Yes. Oh, and off it goes in one.
Oh wow!
As you can see, it's still got competition pebbles. Comes with competition pebbles from last season. But yeah, everything you see, you've got your twin masters there with a bias bar.
And is this your ECU down here?
That is the ECU, yeah. So the ECU on this one is just a basic bike ECU.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's and a lot of the tuning is then done with a power commander, which is hidden elsewhere in the car.
Okay. And the interesting thing I've noticed here, which we touched on off camera, is how far forward your feet are, which Formula One moved the feet back behind the line of the rear axle many years ago, but your feet do still look quite exposed there.
Yeah, the Jedi design has been like this since 1984, and Jedi are still allowed to build cars like this. I personally have had a front end shunt in this car, and nothing moved. So the cars are very strong. The circuit cars themselves have had accidents at much higher speed than I had, and the nose box has stayed intact. So as for the strength, it is very strong at the front end.
Oh, fantastic. Well, let's move back to the cockpit.
Yeah.
So I'll see, is that a fiberglass seat that we've got there?
That is a fiberglass seat out of an old Formula Ford.
Okay. And then we've got I presume that's a sequential shift over there on the left-hand side?
Yeah, it's the standard setup with the bike. So for us, it is 1 forward and then 5 back.
Okay. And I presume, have you bothered with a reverse box at all?
There is no reverse gear on this one. No, for hill climbing, it's not required. The circuit cars do have a reverse, which is a gear drive off the diff. So
okay, that's interesting. So instrumentation wise, to be honest, it looks fairly basic. Just talk us through what you've got in there.
yeah, so with this car, we've got the rev counter, shift lights, oil pressure, neutral, and a gear indicator. And water temperature. So there's no real, for us, there's no need for the speed information. With hill climbs, it's not required. But yeah, for everything else, it just gives us the basic information that we need to know. If there's a problem, we can switch it off fairly quickly.
And with most of the hill climb tracks being quite short, because they're usually, what, 30, maybe 40 seconds at most?
Yeah, I mean, hill climbs, yeah, I think the shortest one is 18 seconds, I think, and then the longest one is over a minute. So,
because I was interested, do you get that much variance in things like water temperature and oil temperature as you're going up the hill?
Yeah, you can do. With a lot of engines, it's kind of critical the window you start in. And yeah, even when you get to the top, even after a short run, the temperature can get quite high. A lot of the cars, they don't run fans, so it is purely reliant on the movement of the air through the radiator itself.
I understand. Okay, that's really great. Let's move back and have a look at the engine side of it.
Yeah, it's not one. Let's pop that back.
Okay, Ben, let's have a look at the exciting bit, under the engine cover.
Okay.
Okay, Ben, give us a quick overview of what we're looking at here.
So the bottom end is Suzuki GSX-S from 2017. The cylinder head is from a 2005-2006 GSX-R.
And they're 1000cc?
And that is a 1000cc format.
Okay.
The throttle bodies themselves are 2006 modified. So everything on there is what you can actually readily get from the market. There is nothing specialized about it. This is a budget built race engine. And
as we were saying, you're running on the original ECU, so it is to an extent fairly plug and play.
Yeah, this one runs 2001 management, so it runs an earlier management system, which there's no real sensor issue. So if you unplug something, it just keeps running, which is great.
And cooling wise, that's the header tank there, and the radiators themselves are in the side pods.
Yeah, this one runs a single radiator in this side pod. Circuit cars have been known to run 2, so twin radiators either side. But yeah, this one runs the single radiator.
And no fans on the cooling. It's just the air rushing by.
This one, because myself and Dad double drive the car, we have to run a fan on this one.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, normally if it was just one of us, then yeah, no, we wouldn't worry about a fan normally.
Okay, so moving back to the drive shafts and rear diff, tell us what we're looking at here.
So the rear drivetrain is made up of a classic mini it's a helical diff. So this one came from MED. So all the fittings are mini, so it's mini outputs, mini pot joints, Even the outer CVs are Metro, if I remember rightly.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So everything is classic. It is as it was built back in the 80s. Everything is available, and and cheap. That's the great thing, is it's cost effective.
Well, no motorsport is what you class as totally affordable, but this is very much at that achievable end of the market.
Yes, yeah.
So looking inside the wheels, we didn't really touch on it front, but we can see the brakes there, the obviously drilled discs. What we're looking at, we've got AP calipers, I believe.
No, Brembos on this.
Oh, Brembos on this one.
This is one of the rare ones that actually runs Brembos.
Okay.
But yeah, it's 2-pot Brembos. The discs on the rear are drilled. The front ones are actually grooved. They stopped making the drilled ones, I think, back about 2004.
Okay. But again, as we mentioned earlier, it's not so
little mileage
that
actually the discs will go on for forever almost.
Okay, Ben, moving right to the back of the car, I can see down by the floor we've got quite a significant diffuser. Yeah,
that's a Mark 6 diffuser. This one actually came out of Jedi's bargain bin, as in out of their scrapyard. Yeah, I've reused it. This one's actually got additional plates on the back here, whereas where the back of the car was hitting the ground and worn away, I've added some little aluminium skids just to keep it going a bit longer. But this one also has additional mounts which goes from the diffuser up to the wing. What it does is it allows the diffuser and wing a bit more stability, a bit more rigidity, and not so much movement to upset the aero balance on the back.
Okay, and moving up to the wing, this looks like, is it aluminium?
The rear wing is aluminium on this one. We've kept it as aluminium. I have plans for a carbon fibre one eventually, but at the moment, for cost-wise and ease to replace, I can reskin it with aluminium for about £25–30, so it's not too bad.
And how much do you have to tweak with the aerodynamics front to rear? Is it you found the sweet spot of the car, or do you tune it for each different track?
I tend to play a little bit at different venues, depending on where we are and what we need. So somewhere that's quite high speed, I will trim everything back almost to as flat as it will go. Places where there's going to be a lot of short, sharp direction changes, I will then tend to turn the wings up. But the majority of the time, I've got a fairly universal position, which I'm happy with, does most places.
Okay, that's been really interesting, Ben. Let's go across and have a look at the other car.
Okay, not a problem.
Okay, Ben, let's have a look at your other car. This looks, what, maybe 10–15% bigger than the Jedi we've just looked at.
Yeah, it is. It's about 10 inches longer on the wheelbase and about 3 or 4 inches wider. So it's actually quite a much bigger car.
Okay, because it looks more what I would expect to see nowadays of a circuit racing car.
It's closer to a modern setup of a car, or modern racing car. So it's got the inboard dampers and things like that. So it's much more modern. It's about 10 years newer than the Jedi. Okay.
So this is an OMS 2000M. They're still producing cars. They now produce the 3000M, which is the slightly newer version. Yeah. OMS being a company there in Harrogate in the UK, and they've been going since 1985, and they're still going today.
Yeah. Steve is still producing cars, and has recently been producing championship-winning cars still. So, the 28 has been a very successful car for Steve.
Okay, let's do a front to back on this one.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
Okay, Ben, let's start right at the front. Another carbon front wing?
It is another carbon front wing.
Okay, so very similar to the Jedi.
Yeah.
But the immediate thing I can see is different is when we look down at the double wishbone suspension, no shock absorbers. So I'm guessing they're inboard?
Yeah, it's all inboard. So I can pop the nose off, and yeah, we have Penske inboard dampers on this with the rockers. So yeah, much more modern of a setup. It's still, again, very easy to work with. Everything is accessible. So, it's a pleasure to work on this car as much as it is on the Jedi.
And this very much is more like a Formula One kind of setup, trying to get that unsprung weight away from the wheels onto the main chassis of the car.
Yes. And it's very much, whereas with the Jedi it's much wider, this is much narrower. So it is, again, it's all the flow towards the back of the car.
And the other thing is, I can see your feet position is back behind that front axle line. So from a crash point of view, quite a lot safer.
Yeah, there is. I mean, the strength is still there. I mean, the difference is there with that, where the Jedi is, it has a steel tube frame around the front. This just has an aluminium crash box, so it's still a strong setup. But yeah, it's as a whole, it's a strong setup.
So this would be like the deformable structure,
yes,
in front of your feet.
Yeah,
brilliant. Okay, let's move back and have a look at the cockpit.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
Okay, moving into the cockpit, Ben, I can see tucked behind the steering wheel there, looks like we've got paddle shifts.
Yeah, this one's got cable paddle shifts, a bit more modern than what the Jedi has got. It's got the ability to do flat shift on the way up and throttle blip on the way down. So full throttle gear changes, makes things much quicker and smoother.
Okay, and can we have a look behind it and see what we've got in the way of dials and
yeah, that's not a problem. Pieces? So this one here on dials, it has just an oil pressure gauge.
That looks a little bit old school, Ben.
It actually came out of a Hillman Imp, so it's proper old school when it comes to it.
Well, if it does the job.
And we've got an oil pressure light. The rest of the information is all on the wheel.
Okay. Oh, so you've got the rev lights across the top.
So we've got the shift lights here. That will show RPM on it. We'll also do gear indicator, engine temperature, and outside air temperature as well.
Oh, fantastic. And I see one last other switch on the left there.
Yeah, the switch on the left is the brake bias. So this one actually has an adjustable brake bias on it. So it's quite handy for quick changes if we need to. Whereas with the Jedi, it's all manual. You have to redo it. This one, you can just literally adjust it and see how you feel almost immediately.
Okay. And moving back to the seat, is that real carbon fibre?
That is a real carbon fibre seat. Yes, it's an OMS factory seat. So yeah, it's a very comfortable seat. When we used the car this year, it was a pleasure to sit in. There was no real movement. So yeah.
Oh, okay. And I know it's just behind there. It looks like the fuel tank. Now that's one thing we didn't talk about on the Jedi, and I understand these normally run really small fuel tanks. I know the one on this is a little bit bigger, but I believe the one on the Jedi is just 4 litres.
The one on the Jedi is about 4 litres, so yeah, quite small. This one has got if I remember rightly, it's about a 15-litre tank, so it's quite a bit bigger.
So Ben, looking at the engine, it looks very similar to what we saw in the Jedi over there just a few minutes ago.
Yes, yeah. So the bottom end on this one is a 2001 GSXR. Well, in fact, the whole engine is a 2001 GSXR, but this one has been bored out to 1098. So about as extreme as you can go with the boring. But everything else on the engine is just normal GSXR. So the cylinder head is a standard GSXR. We have a set of modified injectors and throttle bodies from SBD. But yeah, the car is in what would be almost a roll out of the factory 2001 GSXR form.
Okay, moving across to the rear suspension, I notice inboard mounted shocks again.
Yeah, so we've got the same Penske dampers on the front as we have on the rear. So yeah, and again on the rockers, it's been an easy, accessible setup. To move everything, it's very easy to work with, and
very much that more modern kind of Formula One kind of setup.
Yeah.
Okay, now rear diff, is that different to the one in the Jedi?
It is. This one is the Ford Viscous, which is very similar to the Quaife diff, the grease-filled diff that a lot of kit cars use now.
Oh, okay.
And it's got all the Ford outputs and everything. So this one is much more of a modern Ford setup rather than the classic Mini the Jedi carries.
And brake-wise, again, rear disc with 2-pot calipers.
Yeah, Wilwood calipers on this one. So this one's very easy, straightforward setup to work with. Again on the brakes.
Okay, well let's go and have a look at the rear end on the aerodynamics.
Yeah.
Okay, Ben, moving on to the rear aerodynamics, I see again we've got a fuser there, which I think is that carbon fibre.
That one's a carbon fibre one. Yeah.
Okay. And then up to the rear wing, again, we're looking a bit of carbon fibre here.
This one is, the wing blades are carbon fibre, the end plates are aluminium.
And it looks like you've got twin aerofoils here.
Yeah, this one has got the twin aerofoils. OMS did do a twin aerofoil wing for the hill climb cars. It does make quite a considerable difference, but and it's not actually that much heavier. and it's quite a bit stronger with the extra reinforcements. The early wing just had the top post. This has got a secondary reinforcement underneath, which actually stiffens the whole setup up.
Okay. And then the one thing we haven't talked about yet on this car is the tyres and the wheels. So these are OMS 3-part wheels?
These are OMS 3-piece wheels on this car.
And then obviously you run slick tyres front and back. What width of wheels are we talking about, front and back?
So you're running 8-inch wide on the front and 10-inch wide on the rear, both 13-inch rims. These ones are set up, well, this car is set up for radial tyres, so the radial construction tyres, and this is currently on Pirellis. So yeah, it's again more modern. More modern cars use the radial tyre now.
Okay, brilliant. That's been really informative, Ben. Thank you for watching this video. I'm hoping you found it interesting. If you have, please click those like, subscribe and share buttons. And we're going to be back to you really soon with some great new videos with 7 Spot. We'll see you soon.